Welcome back to the channel. Once again, if you guys like the content that we're providing, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. We will be live in Norwalk for the Summit Racing Equipment NHRA Nationals. So if you want to see the live updates from that event, as well as the highlights from events like this weekend in Virginia, then subscribe today so you don't miss any of the uploads. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So the 9th race of the 2025 NHRA Mission Foods Drag Racing Series season wrapped up this weekend at the NHRA Virginia Nationals from Virginia Motorsports Park. And for the second year in a row, this race was the race that if you had a hot track setup, you're going to be pushed to your limits. I don't know what it is about this time of the year. Summer solstice just kicked in. Right now I'm in Indiana, we're under a heat advisory. When they started round one in Virginia, they were already at 90 degrees. Tony Stewart, after his round one matchup, actually had to go visit the infield care center for the medical doctors because he was suffering from dehydration. Interesting enough, he pointed out as well that he has been hiding an injury for the last 2 weeks, and he just got put on medication for that, which is causing him to have dehydration, which going into this weekend with this weather was not the right combination. He was lucky enough to make it out of round one and continue throughout the rest of the afternoon. And funny car, this was the 1-year anniversary of John Force's accident. John Force Racing came out in full force, wanting to win this weekend and go back-to-back. They had a successful outing at the Virginia Nationals, coming back to the place where the lowest point of the team's history arguably happened this weekend a year ago. And in Pro Stock Motorcycle, it's getting interesting. That's all I can say about that. It's going to get very interesting. This is going to be a little bit of an abbreviated highlights. This weekend is incredibly busy, not just in the NHRA world, but the motorsports world in general. This weekend, if you're a GT3 fan, was the Nürburgring 24. We had the Virginia Nationals today, and the NBA Finals are tonight for Game 7 for the Indiana Pacers. People who know me from Indiana, I'm going to watch that game. So this might be a little bit of an expedited video, but if you're wondering why there wasn't a Saturday video, it's because I was watching the Nürburgring 24 in its entirety. So we're going to have a bit of an abbreviated highlights. It's not going to be normal. You're going to see the normal coverage come back when we're in Norwalk in a week's time, brought to you by our friends at Peak Performance. An incredible weekend top to bottom. Let's get into the brackets and then let's talk about the highlights of this weekend. In Pro Stock Motorcycle, it was announced earlier this week that Brayden Davis will be back on the bike for the Virginia Nationals after an incredible debut back at Bristol for the Vance Hines rental bike. Once again, qualifying #1 and running through the field all weekend long. Mark Ingerson having issues in his round one matchup would allow Brayden Davis to advance to round #2 to face off against Ryan Ayler, who again, for the 3rd weekend in a row, an impressive qualifying effort. It might not look that way in 8th, but for a guy running his own bike program and his own engine program, steps in the right direction continue to be the way for the Flying Ryan Yankee Premium Tequila team as he continues to build momentum for his 2026 championship campaign. Again, he would lose to Brayden Davis, who would go on to the semifinals to have a deja vu moment where he would face off against NHRA. He would not make the same mistake on the starting line where he would double clutch back at Bristol, but he would push himself up off the bike early in the run and pull the clutch in. NHRA would advance to the final round where he would face off against Angie Smith, who made her 10th career final round, her first of the season. Her road to the final round 1 against Destiny Spurlock, who made her NHRA Pro Stock Motorcycle debut. She said after the loss that she'll be back for the U.S. Nationals in late August in Indianapolis. We can't wait to see the future for her. She had a really good debut weekend, qualifying in the 10th spot, bumping some big names on a Hector Rana Motorsports bike, one of which being Hector Rana himself, who qualified 11th. You look down as well. Kelly Klontz, Ron Torno, Mark Ingerson, and Chase Van Sant. Those are some big names that she bumped out of there in her debut. So while a round 1 loss is not what she wanted, she definitely turned some heads this weekend. Angie Smith going on to round #2. A big surprise to some, she would defeat her husband, Matt Smith, who had been running roughshod for everybody except the Vance and Hines pairings of Gage and Richard, but would fall short in round number 2 to Angie. And Angie would probably have the scariest moment of the entire weekend so far, where when she crossed the finish line, one of the covers on the wheelie bar broke off, something got underneath the tire, and she almost wrecked the bike, but she did an incredible job of riding to save that bike and keep herself on top of it. It would pay off as she would move on to the semifinals to defeat Richard Gadsden. After an incredible launch off the turn line, she would run the entire length of the track and defeat Richard, moving on to the finals where she would fall short to Gage Hura. Gage Hura once again winning in Virginia. In Funny Car, the craziness of round 1 would come to an end as not too many surprises would come out of the first round. Number 1 qualifier Jack Beckman would defeat Jim Campbell. Austin Prock would finally make his way out of round number 1, defeating Cruz Pedregon. The only big surprise of the event in Funny Car in round number 1 was Hunter Green taking out Matt Hagan. Blake Alexander was supposed to drive that car this weekend. He fell ill on Friday. Hunter Green was already on the property with his fire suit ready because he was going to be testing on Monday, so they made the last minute decision to swap Blake for Hunter, and it would pay off as Hunter qualified number 11th, would take out number 6 Matt Hagan to advance out of the first round. That week would come to it again against J.R. Todd, who continues to build momentum off of his Epping win on the weekend of Scott Coletta's passing at Englishtown and back in 2008. A strong performance for him as he would make it out of round 1 against Buddy Hull, defeating Hunter Green in round number 2, and then falling short to Austin Prock in the semifinals. But again, another step in the right direction for the J.R. Todd camp. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this was a weekend that John Force Racing wanted to win and almost needed to win. After a year after John's accident, they came in here and ran roughshod through the entire field. They're talking about Daniel Wilkerson having a shot at winning this event. Did not happen, sadly, for Daniel Wilkerson. Issues during the burnout, the throttle didn't want to come closed. They were able to get it closed. They pushed him back. He launched off the starting line. He had a good run, but the car shut off towards the end, and Jack Beckman would make his way back to the final round. It would be an all JFR final between Austin Prock and Jack Beckman. Austin Prock scoring his first win since the Charlotte 4-Wide Nationals back in April, going back-to-back at Virginia. He said this Wally, just like the one last year, is going back to John Force himself. And Austin Prock continues his points lead heading into Norwalk. But again, I do want to give a shout out Daniel Wilkerson. Impressive weekend. That win is coming sooner or later. Back-to-back semifinal round appearances. He won the Mission Foods Too Fast, Too Tasty Challenge on Saturday afternoon, and a qualifying in the number 4th position. This is a strong weekend for the Skag Funny Car team. And in Top Fuel, this was probably the most interesting part of the weekend. Tony Stewart coming into Sunday afternoon. Because of the 3 qualifying sessions, he only had Saturday to get ready, and Saturday was a rough track for anybody trying to put down some big ETs. Tony Stewart, who I believe has a hot track setup, really missed the mark this weekend with Neil Strasbaugh and the entire crew, as he would not make one clean pass, qualifying in the number 14 spot and looking like a sitting duck heading into race day. He was one of the early pairs to go out in round number 1, and I did not have too high expectations of Tony making out of the first round. I expected the track to be in similar conditions based off qualifying to what we saw back at Bristol, where it's going to be a 1-lane racetrack dominated by the left lane. Did not happen, however. The right lane really came into its own, and that really paid off as Tony Stewart was able to take out number 1 qualifier Brittany Force to continue his round 1 record of 9-0, a perfect start to the season. That's what's really going to help him win this championship if he's able to keep the momentum going. Because of the fact of only 14 cars on the property, once again, Tony Stewart had to buy straight into the semifinals, but a deja vu moment from Bristol in that round 2 solo run, smokes the tires early off the line, gives up lane choice to Sean Langdon in the semifinals. Now, that wouldn't play too much of a factor in the situation for Tony Stewart because he jumped the tree. The first red light in competition for him his entire Top Fuel career, left about 94 thousandths early, and it would be a heartbreaking moment because Sean Langdon pulled the tires at half track. Tony Stewart would have had a shot at winning that round and advancing back to the finals. Sean Langdon's been thrown a bone. He makes it to the final round to face off against Justin Ashley, who had back-to-back final round appearances. He qualified number 9, defeating Doug Foley in round number 1, getting payback against Steve Torrance from the Bristol loss a race ago, making it to the semis to face off against Doug Coletta, who had lane choice, loses to Justin. Justin makes it to the finals, had a shot at winning the Virginia Nationals, but would blow the motor about half track heading towards the finish line, and Sean Langdon would continue to be the winningest driver in Top Fuel this season and closing in to within 2 rounds, if I'm correct, of Tony Stewart's Top Fuel points lead heading into Norwalk. And like I said in the video, this was the, again, kind of testing grounds for the 2-day format the NHRA is trying to do, see if maybe the teams want to do it. Pretty interesting, I would say. It really threw a lot of people, I want to say, for a loop because of the fact you didn't have that second day to kind of reset yourself, have new weather, new track conditions to try and improve your ETs. And it really paid off for a lot of guys because, like Jack Beckman said, he didn't think that Q1 run he did was going to hold, but because of how challenging the track was, it was only a 3-second run in qualifying for the funny cars. Bob Tasca coming into this weekend, bringing back the chassis that he ran 341 miles an hour with back at Bradenton. He has retired the chassis that he's been using this year. He said back at Bristol, if I lose one more round, that chassis is done. I have been told that chassis has been sent to a crusher. He is done with that chassis. They have a new one being built that is being tested on Monday in Virginia and will be ready for Norwalk. Other news as well that came out this weekend. Rob Flynn, that was the crew chief for Jasmine Salinas on the Scrappers team, was announced that he will be manning up the role to crew chief the second Rick Ware Racing Top Fuel dragster that will be piloted by Tony Schumacher. He is going to be testing tomorrow as well from Virginia as he gets set for his debut later on in the season. Expect him to come in around the time of the countdown. They already have a sponsor. I don't remember, it's a construction company, I can't remember off the top of my head, but this was the guys' first time on a starting line NHRA event. They brought him out there to get him used to the feeling and kind of sell him further on it. Good to see Tony Schumacher back at the racetrack. Good to see Rob Flynn back at the racetrack. Good to see that the progress is being made on that car because Ida pointed out that the chassis that Tony is running is the chassis that he ran with last year from JCM Racing. We already have the trailers bought, it looks like the cruise is bought, and they have a really good man tuning that car. Because if you remember how good Jasmine Salinas was at the beginning of the year, adding Rob Flynn on that crew with Tony Schumacher, with Jim Oberhofer, and with Clay Milliken, you're looking at a potential for a new superpower team with an NHRA Top Fuel. That's going to be exciting. Pro Stock Motorcycle, Brayden Davis. I thought about this right at the beginning of round number 1 when I saw how good he was to continue that momentum from Bristol. I know it sounds like a lot, but with how motorcycle racing is right now, with how valuable those round wins are and how consistently he's able to advance through the rounds, he's only missed 4 races. I'm trying to remember. It was Gainesville, Charlotte, and Chicago. So that's 3. I believe he actually missed 3 because he was back in Bristol and he was here in Virginia. So to be honest, I really hope he finds the funding, or if at the very least Andrew Hines or Terry Vance or somebody pulls the money to just get the kid on the bike, because with how he's running right now, even though he missed those 3 races, even though he does not have the automatic bid for the countdown, with how good that bike is, he could realistically bump his way into the top 10 if he's able to keep the momentum and to be able to be at every single race from here until Indianapolis. And I genuinely feel if he makes that countdown, then he's going to be one of those guys that you can automatically throw in as a potential championship contender. And imagine how crazy it would be if a guy wins the championship after missing the first 3 races of the season. That would be a story in of itself and really would kind of improve the stock of Brayden Davis. Actually, no, I always forget, Brayden Davis was at Gainesville. He was at Gainesville, so he only missed 2 races. He missed Chicago and he missed Charlotte. Again, someone get that guy on a bike on a full-time ride because he absolutely deserves to be here in Pro Stock Motorcycle. He has proved his worth on that rental bike. He is right now the best rider in the class alongside Gage Herrera and Matt Smith and Richard Gadsden. Back-to-back #1 qualifiers, back-to-back Mission Foods 2 Fast 2 Tasty Challenge wins. That win's coming sooner or later. It's going to come this season. If he's in Norwalk, be ready because I guarantee you at some point it's going to come his way. If not Norwalk, expect it to come at least at some point during the Western Swing. He was able to make it out there. Funny car, Austin Prock once again proving why he is the points leader, why he is the reigning and defending funny car world champion. He has had an impressive start to the season. The last 2 races did not go the way he went with back-to-back round 1 losses, but he came back swinging this weekend to win here at Virginia a year after having to win that race with John Force in the hospital and having him back on the starting line. This could be, I said it back after Epping, and I had to bite the bullet on that before. That was the turning point because of the frustration. But with where that car is at right now, with where that team's at right now, if this is the motivating factor that's going to get them back in there after having this powerful of a win, only time will tell. Austin Park's going to be a championship contender whether or not he wins out the rest of the season. Because right now he's still the funny car points leader. I believe he's brought back the gap that he might have lost from those 2 first-round losses at Epping and at Bristol. But for Jack Beckman, another strong performance for him. Those 2 JFR cars are quickly becoming a runaway train. But Paul Lee is really starting to make a name for himself as well. Had a rough middle portion of the season, but is starting to make his name once again after having consistent runs and consistent round 1 wins, which you can afford to have round 2 losses. You can afford to have semifinal losses. But if you lose those round 1 wins, you lose the championship. Those cost everybody every single time. That's going to be important. For Top Fuel, Tony Stewart continues his points lead heading into the next race. I was surprised that he mentioned the injury. I didn't know anything about it. So obviously it's not affecting him too much if he's able to go out there and consistently run, but if he's trying to take meds just to keep the pain away, I'm curious what that might be, but that's going to be up to him if he ever wants to talk about that. Again, massive props to the TSR crew after having such a rough weekend. Neil talked about it after round 1. The team stayed extra late overnight to get the car prepared for Sunday to try and make up for what happened in qualifying, and boy did they ever. Really strong car, continuing to prove why this is arguably the championship favorite car right now. Yes, it is the points leader. Tony is still very reluctant to call himself a championship favorite, but even when he has these rough weekends in qualifying and he has these rough performances on the light where he had a 0.94 red light in the semifinals, regardless of the fact he made the semifinals, and that's all that really matters, because with that points reset, that's going to make everything even again. And if he's able to consistently make it to the semis and consistently make it out of the first round like he has all season long, then the sky's the limit for that team. And then Sean Langdon, that team is, if he can, again, keep the consistency rolling like he has all season long. I believe he had a round 2 semifinal loss at Bristol, fell short there. If he can keep the consistency, keep making semifinal rounds, and keep making final round appearances, he's going to be right back where he was a year ago and be probably one of the few people that can challenge Tony Stewart for this championship. And with the experience factor of being in those Top Fuel championship positions and winning championships in the countdown, that could be the difference maker for him, even though Tony Stewart has raced in these kinds of point scenarios before, but it's never been in these round by round drag racing events. So that could be a real big advantage to Sean Langdon. Justin Ashley, heartbreaking for him, came up just short again. It's surprising to think that this late into the season, we're talking about Justin Ashley working for his first win of the season. Back-to-back final rounds, the team's really starting to turn the corner back to what we're used to seeing out of them, but the consistency just isn't there yet. And it's going to be a question on how long it takes for them to get there. Like I keep saying, with the points reset and the countdown is going to make everything even again, but he needs to find that consistency to be able to go out there for the championship. I've been blabbering a lot. I really have run out of things to say. That is going to wrap up the video here for this weekend at the Virginia Nationals. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. We'll be live from Norwalk for the Summit Racing Equipment NHRA Nationals presented by Peak Performance. Be sure to follow me on all social media pages down below on Mighty Mac 03 on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And until next weekend, from